This meeting is being recorded.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi, Gigi. How do you pronounce your name? Is that
It's
Hervé?
Gigi.
Yep, you got it.
Oh, hi, Gigi. Hervé, I got it. Awesome.
You got it.
Jaime? Let's just wait for a few folks to come in here. Quick show of hands. How many folks here are coming from Never Search Alone? Awesome. Okay, cool. I think we got a quorum here. We have about 30 minutes. Gigi, NSA fan here. Awesome. So just super quick introduction. I've been recruiting for the past 10 years. Over the past 9 months, I've been working with two JSCs, but have recently ramped down from the group since many of them have kind of moved on and found their next positions. I am not a job seeker. I run a small recruiting firm, and we're also building some AI to help with to really help with the recruiting process for clients. So anyway, I know that talking with a recruiter is a bit elusive, and just in terms of me just giving back to the community, I started this last week. It doesn't look like any folks here today are joining from last week, but anyway, just scheduling weekly 30 minutes. If there's any questions I can field as it relates to recruiting, sort of the black box behind recruiting, interview processes. I've worked with dozens of clients over the past 10, 11 years. So I have a decent understanding of the recruiter mindset as well as the hiring manager mindset. And hopefully, by answering any questions to the best of my ability, it help put your guys' job search on a better trajectory. So that's my intent here. Hey, Gigi, you have a question?
I do. First of all, thank you for doing this as a give back. Really appreciate
Sure.
it. As part of the Never Search Alone process, I'm just curious as to how important is it to start honing relationships with people like yourselves? I'm on a flow search personally myself, but networking with recruiters and really understanding, having them understand you or you understand them. I mean, how important do you think that is at this stage in the game, especially if you're on a flow search?
Especially if you're on the what?
A slow search.
You're on a slow
So
search.
there's a slow,
Yeah.
there's active search for people who are, yeah. So I'm currently employed.
Okay. So the question, and correct me if I'm wrong here, Gigi, is you're trying to get a sense of how important or sort of how you should prioritize your efforts in terms of developing relationships with recruiters as a slow searcher. Is that fair?
Correct.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's really, you have to sort of balance your time, right? I mean, if you're fully employed, obviously, you have other responsibilities and duties, but my recommendation, generally speaking, is that you should forge relationships with recruiters, before you need them. It gives you a sense, if you're somebody that is already employed and you're pretty happily employed, connecting with a recruiter or two every quarter would be beneficial to kind of get a sense of what's in the market, what you might be seeing or what they might be seeing in terms of trends and things like that. And so, but really it's a personal question in terms of, how you sort of balance your time. What I see often, and right now it's kind of a strange market because, it's quite a 180 from 24 months ago. A lot of employers have sort of the leverage now, and there's an abundance of great talent out there that are looking for their next opportunity. And so there's a bit of a scramble on the part of job seekers out there to connect with recruiters And so recruiters get kind of inundated. And in part, I get a bit inundated too. So that's part of why I'm trying to do this as a group to address sort of questions at a bit more scale. But yeah, I think it's a bit of a personal question, and it's for you to determine, how much time you're investing in developing relationships while you're employed and so forth. So I hope that helps.
It does. I don't want to monopolize. I have a follow-up based on what you just said, but let me let others chime in.
Okay. And I'll be monitoring the chat if anyone wants to drop anything in there as well.
I do have a quick question about compensation. It feels like it used to be that folks didn't lead with comp. They led with skills and fit, and then comp sort of came at the end. But now it feels like it's the reverse, where you need to declare your comp up front, or at least companies are declaring that with salary ranges. And then, like in my case, a lot of times after the first interview with whomever, and I'm a senior guy, but usually after that first interview at the very end, they talk about comp. Usually it's low. So I'm sort of selling into that environment. I'm just wondering, what are some strategies and tactics that you've seen folks use or that you'd recommend in terms of how to deal with that?
Yeah, I think what you're seeing is pretty consistent with what I've been seeing and what others I've been talking to have been seeing. A lot of companies are leading with comp. And so as a recruiter, it's often a question that I'll ask early in this, usually in the first stage, the first point of contact. And it's not, it's not what are you making or what did you make in your last position. Most recruiters won't ask that. They'll ask what are your comp expectations? So what are you hoping to make in your next position? And so I think that's more of a fair question. But as a recruiter, I appreciate when a candidate is transparent with me, and not to say that it'll lock them in, right? And more often, a better way to answer that question is to give a range. And if you don't know the range, you should do some homework, right? And you should have a range in mind that you would expect for the given role. And really, the rationale for the question on the part of the recruiter is they don't want to waste your time. They don't want you to waste their time. They want to make sure that there's some overlap, at least to get the process going. And so, that's how I've been doing it over the past 10 years. Like, I'll get a sense of what their comp expectations are and make sure that aligns with the requirements of the job position that's open. Now, depending on the kind of company that you're interviewing with, if it's a larger company versus a smaller company, early stage startup, which is, by the way, most of the companies I've been recruiting for over the past 10 years have been venture-backed startups, early stage, growth stage. And so they tend to have a little bit more flexibility. They're not as rigid in terms of, having a certain budget. So if you're interviewing with an earlier stage company, the trajectory that you could presumably put the company on, they want to get the right people in the door, right? And so there's less bureaucracy around, going outside of a predefined budget for a position. So you might have more negotiating. There might be more room for negotiation for a smaller company.
Okay.
A bit of a brain dump there, Hervé. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's great. Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
Yep.
Let me check the chat here. Jaime, is there still audio issues? Can you hear us okay?
I'm good. I can hear. Thank
Okay,
you.
great. Hi, Alexi. Did I pronounce that correctly? Tammy, did you have a question?
Hi. No, go ahead. No, so my question's okay. So I'm in NSA and fast seeking because I was part of layoffs that happened at the end of last year. In terms of recruiters, what has been interesting to me is, and I'm in tech, so I'm a technical program manager, technical project management, interchangeable, is the lack of recruiters that I seem to be attracting or finding. So far I had a couple of interviews, but unfortunately they did not pan out. over the last week. One was a referral, one was I blind applied on the website and got through 3 rounds. So, once the recruiter got me, I was moved along in that process. But in terms of attracting recruiters for new opportunities, any advice?
Yeah, so there's a few things that I've observed going on right now. There's a lot of recruiters that are out of work too.
Yeah.
Companies are slimming down their recruiting. And so a lot of what recruiters are dealing with right now are really sorting through the inbound applicants that come into their job postings. And this is generally speaking, right? There's an abundance of talent out there. There's an abundance of applicants. And so recruiters are, unless it's a sort of a really hard to find or sort of a nuanced or niche skill set or role that they're looking to fill, in many ways, a lot of recruiters are relying on inbound versus outbound sourcing, right? And so that might be part of what you're seeing out there, with recruiters less likely to reach out to you. Now, if you're talking about, you applying and then you're not hearing from the recruiter, I mean, that's a whole other thing that's going on too. That's somewhat related. Again, there's an abundance of talent out there. Recruiters are getting a lot of inbound. A lot of the inbound is spam. A lot of inbound is spam. I mean, there's these apps out there that you can use that'll spam your resume everywhere, and so it's creating a problem for everyone, right? In terms of tips to get on a recruiter's radar, I think I talked about this a little bit last week, but recruiters are super busy, especially now because companies are slimming down their recruiting teams. Just networking with recruiters on LinkedIn, not just doing sort of a cold outreach to them, but if you can start to, maybe comment on some of their posts or interact with some of their social media posts, that could be helpful just to get on their radar. I know that works on me. That works on me when I post and someone is engaging with my content, liking it or commenting back in a meaningful way. Their name gets on my radar, and there's a few folks that have done that, over the past few months, and then we've connected and we've become sort of friends, so that could be sort of a tactic that works. Hope that helps, Tammy.
All right, thanks.
If you guys don't have questions for me, I have questions for you guys. To what extent have you guys been integrating AI in your job search process? How have you been doing that, if at all?
I'm not far enough into it to comment, so I'll pass on that one.
Okay.
I use it for cover letters in the sense that there's a section of my cover letters. I always include a cover letter. And in my cover letter, I usually look at what the employer is looking for, and I'll use AI to quickly draft a response to each point.
Okay.
I never, ever, ever don't touch what AI produces. It's always edited by necessity, really. So I tailor my cover letters. I can't tell if it's helped or not, though. I can't tell if cover letters have helped or not. But the content's good enough. I stand behind what it says. It's accurate, right? And it does save me some time. Not a lot of time, but responding to those bullets over and over and over again as to why I'm strategic and why I'm this, that, and the other thing. That's time consuming.
Yeah.
My biggest fear for using AI is that there are AI detection tools that I'm not sure if even a recruiter has time or hiring manager to see if a cover letter or a LinkedIn profile that I used using AI, because a anti-AI tool that they're using. So I always am afraid of using AI, even if I tweak it or modify it. So that's just my 2 cents.
Yeah.
I've used it.
Go ahead.
I haven't used it to create anything. I've used it to check So LinkedIn's got that new check tool, how qualified I am, how can I make it better? And then job scan to see, hey, this resume which I've just touched and tried to specify more closely to the job description. I'll do a job scan to make sure I've touched on the big points and kind of upped my score a little bit.
Okay.
So I've been more lightweight. I haven't created anything new though.
Okay. Just some quick comments on
I'll
the
tell
cover
you how
letter.
I'd love.
Oh, go ahead.
So
Who was
Eric,
that?
sorry. Do you mind if I tell you how I'd love to use it, and you guys can tell
Yeah,
me if something
please.
like this exists? So in the past, I've done Q letters for recruiters and for hiring managers, so qualification letters, where I have a grid that takes the top 3 or 5 qualifications they want on one side, on the left side, and then on my side is what I have that maps to those. So I'd love to be able to take my resume every time and use AI to just automatically generate it based on the qualifications, the top qualifications. It seems like that
Yeah.
should be doable.
Yeah. I've seen folks do that before, and it seems to be pretty. You're speaking the language of the recruiter, the recruiter that is searching on that job. Two quick comments. One on the cover letters. This came up last week, and I'll share with you my opinion. Take it or leave it. My impression as a recruiter, a lot of recruiters don't look at cover letters. And unless the company is asking explicitly for a cover letter, I would definitely write one, and I would definitely spend time to make it custom or personalized to the job. But if not asking for one, I wouldn't submit one. And if they're telling you not to submit one, definitely don't submit one.
Right.
Yeah. You can spend a lot of time on cover letters. As a recruiter, I don't look at cover letters. I look more so at obviously the resume. And then I look at LinkedIn profiles. But keep in mind, again, I'm recruiting senior, executive level down to senior individual contributor level, and mostly in tech. So this might apply differently in different industries.
Mhm.
No, that's helpful because that's me. You just described me. So that's super helpful to know your reality that you don't even look at the cover letter.
Yeah, it's I would definitely spend time personalizing your resume. And to your point about using AI to help personalize the resume for the job that you're applying to, I think AI, generative AI can be really helpful for that. I think the other comment was about, the tools on the company side that they may be using to, filter or screen out resumes. I recently took a survey of some of the major ATS systems out there, and a lot of them are not using AI to the extent that most candidates think they are in terms of, so the low hanging fruit, right, is like helping a recruiter write an outbound message or response, right?
Mhm.
And you're seeing that all over the place now, right? But in terms of taking your resume and like scoring it or it just sort of excluding you from the applicant inbound, the inbound stack, I haven't seen, I mean, granted, this is a small survey of like 4 or 5 of the major ATS systems out there, but they're not doing that. And I think there's some concern maybe about either liability or about the AI actually making the judgment call on whether to include or exclude you. And so I just haven't seen it integrated into those ATSs yet. So for what that's worth.
So that being said, how many resumes does a human look at? What percentage of all of the hundreds of resumes that come in for a job does a human look at, even if it's for 3 seconds or 5 seconds? Would you say 100% of them, or?
So there's a stat out there that I saw that your typical job posting nowadays are getting about 250 resumes or applications or resumes. Recruiters go through a process of culling it down. And so I would say if you have a stack of 250 resumes or applicants that are coming inbound, typically a recruiter will go through those resumes, and to your point, they'll spend 3 to 7 seconds on it. But that first pass is they're looking for any excuse to exclude you. So if they see a typo or two, that's really good reason for them to be like, whatever, swipe left or whatever that is. I think it's swipe left, right? And they'll go through a pass where they'll just look for any reason to exclude you, right? And then next, and whoever makes it to that stage, a lot of times they'll look closer at the resume to select this is where they'll look at the next stack. They'll spend more time on it. But yeah, I think to the point is like, don't do anything on your resume that would prematurely exclude you. But there are tools out there and a lot of them are, I just haven't seen them mainstream yet. So when you're talking about like AI excluding you and you have to optimize your resume for keywords, you can spend a little bit of time on that, but I wouldn't spend too much time on that. Recruiters, when they're using ATS systems, they'll have, your resume will go into a database and it'll be assigned to a certain job requisition. And if for some reason you don't make it through, or they move forward with a cohort, and maybe your resume comes in late and it just doesn't make that cohort, your resume is still in that system. And so when a new job position comes up, the recruiter will go do a keyword search typically and look for folks in their system that has those keywords associated. So that may be a way to get sort of scooped up if you're not getting caught up in that first position that you're applying for. I know LinkedIn, and there's another, I think it was Workable. It might have been Workable, the ATS, but they do something similar where they do have an AI that is looking at their database, and they're making recommendations of, you should look at so and so typically because of keywords, and then they'll propose that to the recruiter. So yeah, the long story short is you can spend some time on keyword optimization, and you can use ChatGPT to kind of help with that. I would definitely look at the job description, and you can ask ChatGPT to look at the job description and pull out certain keywords and try to integrate those into your resume. But yeah, I wouldn't spend too much time on that. I guess that's the point. Your time is better spent networking.
Okay, did you see the question I just put in the chat, Eric?
Gigi, I have a friend who swears that after starting to submit her resumes as Word doc versus PDF, she started getting interviews. That it got through the ATS as a Word doc.
She's like, I have a lesson learned for you.
I don't know what to say to that. I mean, as far as I've seen, all these ATSs are just as good at reading a Word doc as they are a PDF. Unless there's something weird you're doing with the PDF. What I would avoid is columns, because that could throw. I would avoid columns. I would avoid tables, either in Word or in PDFs when you're submitting
tables and columns.
I would avoid it.
Okay.
Yeah.
What about when you haven't?
I have a question on that. Go ahead, Gigi. You go first.
What if you have an internal referral? So I had an internal referral for my exact job at a company, and she put me in, and my friend, my former coworker, I immediately got rejected. So like what? And maybe I missed the cohort, like you said, like, the timing was off. But when you have an internal referral, at least at my company now, that automatically bumps you up to at least getting a recruiter screen. Just curious if you have any thoughts on that.
In my experience, that's totally the case. So it might have, I'm just speculating here. It might have been the case that you missed the cohort, right? When you think about these applications, right? A job posting goes out and they're basically creating a funnel, right? So you get inbound, and inbound doesn't come all at once. Well, it kind of does sometimes, right? But maybe there's a huge influx initially, but then you have people trickling in. But what happens is when that job posting is posted, the recruiter will wait some time. There'll be some inbound. Then the recruiter will start looking at these folks and they'll start selecting, and then they'll start working a subset of those folks, a cohort, through the process. Meanwhile, still people are coming inbound, right? But if the recruiter is happy with that cohort and they feel that somebody in that cohort is going to sort of progress and get an offer and eventually get hired, they'll spend less time at the top of the funnel, right? So there is a timing sort of thing. And this is exactly the stuff that I'm hoping to share with you folks so you can kind of understand like just the mindset and how things happen. You can kind of correlate that with what you're seeing. But yeah, a job posting comes out, bunch of inbound, recruiter starts looking at it, they start working a cohort down through the funnel. They're spending less time looking at the top of this funnel now because they're focused on this. Meanwhile, they have 6, 7 other requisitions they're working on, right? So this part of the funnel is going to get ignored for some time. If somebody makes it through, great. They'll, at some point maybe they'll tell you that, the position's been filled, and thank you for applying. Or sometimes they don't. It just depends, right? Some companies they just don't automate that, or the recruiters, just not as conscientious about that or even courteous about that. But if somebody's not making it through this cohort, the cohort gets scrapped, then they'll start looking again to the top, right? And they'll start forming a new cohort to kind of push through the process. So that might be something that you're seeing there with that referral. But again, I'm just speculating. Hey, Susan.
Yes. Yeah. So, what is an optimal amount of time to get into that cohort? Would you say a week after the job's been posted, or within that first week?
Ideally, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the sooner the better. Because again, what the recruiter is looking at is assuming that they're only looking at the inbound, because they might even be sourcing for this position, right? So that's another story. There's 2 sort of major channels, right? It's sort of the inbound, and then they're doing their own outreach. This is particularly true for more higher level roles, roles that are higher level roles that are hard to fill, more specialized experience. But I would say just trying to get into the funnel sooner rather than later.
And what about like on LinkedIn, you see jobs getting reposted. Is it just the systems thing? So we shouldn't waste our time on those types of jobs.
Yeah, so if jobs are getting reposted by the same company for the same position, it could be any number of things. Maybe that funnel that they built has sort of failed, and they turned it off because they got a bunch of inbound. They felt confident about the folks that they have in the funnel, but it turns out that that wasn't the case, and they turned it back on because they need more people now. That could be something that happens, and I've seen that happen before. It could be that they're redefining the role, right? Because sometimes companies, when they do a job posting, especially if it's a smaller company that's never hired for the role before, there is so much learning that goes on the back end with respect to the hiring manager, the interviewing team. If it's the first time they've ever hired for that role because it's a smaller company, there's so much learning. And sometimes what will happen is they'll learn, and then they'll be like, oh, well, actually we need this. So they'll redefine the role.
Right.
So sometimes that happens. Less frequently. That happens less frequently with larger companies, right?
I have 2 questions for you. One is you mentioned spamming, and I've always been taught that after you apply for a job, if there's a recruiter associated with that role, you should like message them on LinkedIn. And do recruiters appreciate that, or do they feel like they're being spammed at?
No, I mean they get a lot of it.
Yeah.
And when I get it, it's not like I don't appreciate it. I appreciate it, but the more that you can make it meaningful or stick out or relevant to the recruiter, to the person, the more you'll get their attention. And again, sort of the tactic that I'd encourage is trying to connect with the person and, try to connect with their content, try to get them, engage with their content. Because more often than not, they're posting something. A lot of recruiters will post about the company, or they'll post about their craft, right? Which is recruiting, or maybe something within their profession. So if you can connect with them on that level, right? When you message them, your name there'll be some association, right? They won't be the first time seeing your name.
Right.
That's sort of the rationale.
And then the last question I have is about ghost jobs. I keep hearing about ghost jobs. Is that really true? Like jobs being posted that don't really exist?
That's interesting. Based on my own experience, I've seen jobs posted by companies where they're trying to learn to that point of earlier, and they'll try to see what's out in the market. And it's not completely like malicious. I mean, they have some intent of hiring, but they also acknowledge that it might be like it might evolve, right? I think what you're suggesting with ghost jobs, I think, is it for fraudulent reasons? They're trying to build a pipeline so that they can market or sell something to you? Is that what
No,
you?
no, no. But I think there's a lot of suspicion that companies just post jobs out there. I don't know, either for perception or maybe they are trying to build up a pipeline of talent. I don't really know. I just, I'm not educated well enough.
I'll put one thing that I know my company did is they would do, it's not a ghost job, but they would post something with a lower expectation to hire. So it was for a competitive intelligence something, and they wanted to see what kind of candidate they could get. There wasn't budget reserved. But if they found the perfect person, then maybe we could look at that because we needed that function. So I didn't love that, but I could see why you might want, like they did that.
Yeah, and it comes down to like how do you spend your time, right? It's one thing I always urge folks is to try to get to know faster. That way you can spend your cycles on trying to pursue the maybes or the yeses. Jaime said that there's a Wall Street Journal article on ghost jobs. If you had the link, Jaime, that'd be cool to drop it. Tammy, sorry, you had a
That's
question.
okay. Hi. Trying to lower my hand here. There we go. Back to the comment about the funnels, the recruiters being too busy and the inbounds coming in and then going through your cohorts. Is there any value in, say, you go to PayPal's website and you don't see anything specific for you, and they're like, join our talent network, and they want you to upload your resume, put your information in there. Are these companies actually going into the database to search, or are they just going to repost the next job and wait for the inbounds to come in?
Yeah, it depends on the recruiter, right? Depending on the recruiter, depending on the company. Some companies have sort of an established database because they've just been around for a while. They've had a ton of jobs that people have applied to, and maybe they have other recruiters that have interviewed folks, and so there's notes on people. I think one thing that AI is is trying to make that more accessible. So, for example, like if you're a large company and you have hundreds of jobs each year, and maybe hundreds or thousands of interviews with candidates, and you have recruiters that are taking a bunch of notes on their interaction with these candidates, like that's valuable. But a lot of times, pre AI, a lot of times that information is sort of locked up in the ATS system and it's not easily accessible. I think there's some features and some functionality where they're trying to use AI to unlock your data, your corporate data, and that includes like metadata on candidates to make it more accessible to recruiters, like internal recruiters. And so that would be a huge win for everyone, right? Because you've done these people have done these interviews before. Why not make it easy on recruiters so that they can find the candidate again? And a lot of that is just making the data more accessible to the recruiter where they need it. So hopefully, as time progresses, that that'll become more available. And yeah. Oh, I mean, you posted that article. Awesome. I'll have to take a look at that later.
I just wanted to share, you were talking about AI. I actually applied to a job where I was given the option to opt in or opt out of being screened by AI. And I opted out because I would prefer to have my resume be viewed by a resume, but I don't know how, do you see that as a trend?
Actually, yeah. So we're kind of working on something that's going to be similar to that, sort of an opt-in Just show of hands, what Alexei just described there. If you were faced with that, would you be more likely to opt into the AI reviewing your resume or opt out?
Depends on the employer. Depends on whether or not I trust them, basically.
Out. Okay, interesting. So you feel like it would put you guys at a disadvantage if you opted into the AI. That's interesting. Okay.
I think mainly because I have no idea how smart that AI is and what kind of logic it's based on.
If there was the option to say both a recruiter and an AI, that could lessen it a bit, just to say, because there's some nuggets that I love my resume. Like there's some, like I've been coached so many different ways and these are the words I want in it, but I still think I want a human. So I would love to have both as opposed to either or.
Yeah.
But either no AI or AI and human. So human only or human and AI. That would
And
be nice.
actually, I have heard of people who keep two different versions of their resume, one for the ATS and one to send to the recruiter.
Okay.
That was actually my question. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, Jaime said that, especially as a career changer. Yeah, I could see that, Jaime, as a career changer.
So I have two versions. If I am referred to a role and I know that a friend is putting my name forward, I have a one-pager version. It's a slightly smaller font, but it's all on one page. I've got an amazing history from 20 years ago. I was a professional athlete. So I love having that on my resume, but it's because it's so long ago, it's on my second page. So I'd like to have a one-pager. And then for me applying, I'll do my two-pager because there's more words on it. Do you have a perspective on that? So
Wait, the first resume was for what?
If it's a referral and I'm emailing it to a friend to be forwarded to a recruiter. So if I know that it's a human looking at it, or if I'm talking to a recruiter directly, I know that they will look at it. I usually start with my first page or with my one page because it's a tighter resume. Do you have a perspective on that? Actually, that's my question.
Do
you like one pagers or?
No? So from my perspective, it doesn't matter. Whether it's it doesn't matter. I believe that resumes should be truncated. If you have like 30 years of experience, that last 10 years is probably not as relevant. Probably, I say it's probably not as relevant. In fact, the last 15 years is probably not as relevant. You could probably truncate the resume because there's also that whole concern about ageism too, right? If your resume is 30 years long, it's like they might work against you. But yeah, most of these resumes are not getting printed out anyway, and people can scroll pretty easily. But it's interesting. I don't think there's one way to do it. The use case is interesting where you have, the one pager for the situation you described, where you already know that a human being is going to be looking at it. I have to jump, you guys. I didn't realize it was 10 after. Any other quick questions? And I'll be doing this on a weekly basis, so if it's helpful, I'm happy to jump in. I've been given all kinds of strange use cases in the past that people have dealt with, and I'm happy to kind of talk through that too, you guys. So anyway, any other last quick questions, Tammy?
No, I was just going to say thank you.
Okay, you're welcome, you guys. Hopefully it's helpful.
Thanks.
And I'll be doing this on a weekly basis.
Great, thank you.
Thank you so
Very
much.
useful. Thanks.